And now it is time to continue our season-long previews of the entire NFL. And we've made our way into the NFC, wrapping up the NFC East this evening with our coverage of the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. And for that, we bring in Chris Franklin. He is a beat writer for the Philadelphia Eagles for a number of publications, including NJ.com, and also a member of the distinguished group, the Pro Football Writers Association. Mr. Franklin, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And let's get right into it here. The defending Super Bowl champs, Mark and I were talking about it earlier in this program. 2 out of the last 3 years, they've been to the big game. They've won 14 games in each of those seasons. Now this year, their season win total here in Las Vegas is 11.5. Is that disrespectful, or would you expect some regression out of the champs?
Well, I think it's perfect, because when you look at it, especially as tough as their schedule is, it's murderer's row. And they lost a lot on defense. I mean, you lose C.J. Gardner-Johnson in the back end with the safety. Josh Sweat goes to the Arizona Cardinals. You lost Milton Williams, some of your depth there. They have guys like Mauro Jomo, who was basically the 4th, 5th defensive tackle. He's being elevated as well, too. So the defense took a hit. So I could see a regression in that effect, but that schedule, boy, it says heavy lies the crown. When you're the Super Bowl champions, that crown gets a lot heavier, and it comes in the form of the schedule.
If the Eagles are going to fail, why is it going to happen? If they don't have a successful season, if they don't win the NFC East, what goes wrong for them?
I think mainly is 2 things. I think as we look at their pass rush, and I think it's health. I think when you look at their pass rush right now, you have Nolan Smith coming back, and Jalix Hunt, both guys very young, both who showed that toward the end of last season, they were really coming on. They were mixing up their various pass rush looks. They were getting around the corner, and they were becoming a problem. Well, also the Eagles, you like to use that rotations to keep them fresh. Well, you don't have Brandon Graham there anymore. As we mentioned, you don't have Josh Sweat. So interior-wise, with your defensive line, the defensive tackles, what have you, got Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis is fine. But if you can't get pressure around the edges, and a lot of these quarterbacks that they're facing has a lot of time to pick apart, especially you talk about on the back end, you're sitting there and you're questioning. And then when it comes to just overall depth, I still think they're a little top-heavy defensively on a lot of things, as well as linebacker, cornerback for sure, because, Darius Slay's now with the Pittsburgh Steelers, so you got to worry about that now. And then I think we look at stuff like tight end, and then all importantly, Saquon Barkley. If he had a huge workload last year, and it gets to a point where if he gets dinged up more because he's still feeling effects from last year, and you have to rely on your more passing game, that's when these questions start popping up. So if they aren't healthy, and if they can't generate a pass rush, then all of a sudden you're talking about a potential wild card team.
Chris, I think there's a lot to be said about continuity. And sometimes, when we're trying to handicap teams and we see a lot of changeover in coaching and quarterback and this type of thing, sometimes that is a team to maybe bet against. And it hasn't really caused a problem, it seems, for the Philadelphia Eagles. They've had a number of offensive coordinators, a number of different offensive coordinators in the past few years. But as I noted, they've been very successful, a couple of Super Bowls, including a win last year. Well, now you've got a new guy in Kevin Patullo, but he's been in this system for a minute, several years, and most recently as the passing game coordinator. Do you think they pick up right where they left off, or is this guy a little green behind the ears?
I think with the way they rotate all these offensive coordinators, I'm pretty sure all of us are about to get a call pretty soon to start filling in pretty much to go ahead and start calling those things here. But with Patullo, it helps in the sense that he knows the personnel already. He's been Nick Sirianni's right-hand man and following him even back to the time when they were with the Colts. And you look at it, the biggest concern is you worry about, you get to see, even though you get to scheme everything up, it's getting that flow of the play calling. Now, early on that first game, even those backups, you're seeing them looking like, wow, okay, it's great. His base packages and everything. These guys are really rolling. He's getting a flow. He's setting things up. It's perfect. And then you start to look a little bit when it comes to that last game. Yesterday, it's like, what's going on? I think overall, when you see the ones in there and you see them really working and everything else, I think that'll be okay. It's a matter of when you get towards the back end of the season, when you see a lot of these division opponents a second time, can you create a counter game plan that won't look predictable and stuff like that for it? I think we'll still see motion. I think Kellen Moore set the groundwork for that, because before Kellen Moore came in, they were very stagnant. You're like, okay, we know where this is going. Defense didn't move. You didn't get guys moving around. Next thing you know, defense stopped it. We saw the motion with Kellen Moore brought. So you'll see, I think when you look at Patullo, I think you'll see a guy who took a little bit from everybody did. I think he's going to take a little bit from Shane Steichen, Nick Sirianni himself, use his experience because he's another former quarterback. He was collegiately, he was a former quarterback as well too. So use that experience to get Jalen Hurts to in the best positions possible. But if it was somebody completely new out this organization, I'd have a lot more concern with Patula, who's been around for a while. I think it's me.
What do you do with Saquon Barkley? It's nearly impossible for him to duplicate the season that he had last year, so some regression should be coming. Obviously, teams are going to be scheming for what he does in Philadelphia. What's your sort of prediction on Saquon? Will he be used in the same manner? What sort of production can we expect?
I think they're going to try to use him a little bit. I think there's a couple options where, say, if they get up early, which is tough to look at the schedule, say they get up a little bit, or maybe they give him like 2 or 3 less carries to try to preserve him over time. Maybe you don't use him as much as the passing game if you do at all, and use that. And I thought the one thing that was pretty interesting when they didn't re-sign Kenny Gainwell and decided to keep Will Shipley and elevate him to be the new backup number 2, and you see his big play potential. So when you look at that big play potential, what he can do, and the way he can spread them out, man, especially with that trade that happened today with John Mechie, you get teams to spread them out and you use them. You can still have a lot of success with Saquon Barkley running in between the tackles. And maybe if he's breaking a few more runs, maybe you utilize Shipley a little bit more into that game plan, so you're not really wearing him down overall. So I don't expect him to run for over 2,000 yards again. I don't think we're talking about here, hey, Eric Dickerson, watch out again. He's going to take your title. A rushing title. I don't see that happening, but I still think he's going to be a very effective first player and something where Nick Sirianni and running backs coach Jamal Singleton are going to try to vary it up a little bit so that way he's not on the field as much so they can have him for a postseason run.
Chris, you mentioned that they lost a lot of players on defense. They also went heavy after defensive players in both the draft and in free agency in the offseason. Is it enough to fill the gaps or no?
I think it's all except for cornerback. I still have a lot of questions. I know they traded for Ja'Cory Bennett from the Raiders and said the backup defensive tackle. That's my main concern because there's nothing besides the pass rush. Because if you don't have anybody, you have to use Mitchell to roam around and do that. If you don't have enough there, I still think there's a lot of questions. So I won't be surprised if we saw a few more trades coming up. I really think that's the best way for them to do that, and especially fill on the defensive side of the ball.
He is Chris Franklin. He is a beat writer for the Philadelphia Eagles. You can find his work at nj.com. You can also find his work with the Pro Football Writers Association. We're talking Philadelphia Eagles. We will have more on the other side as we continue to dive into this team deep and their expectations for 2025. We'll be right back with more in just a moment on In-Game Live Gameday right here on SportsGrid. We are back here on In-Game Live Gameday on SportsGrid. Brady Cannon and Mark Zinno with you. Chris Franklin, our guest, kind enough to stick around as we continue to break down the Philadelphia Eagles, the defending Super Bowl champions who have been to the big dance twice in the last 3 years, both times, of course, facing the Kansas City Chiefs. They have split that series. Chris, I want to ask you, in the offseason, it was an interesting vote that, went before the committee. I don't know which committee it was, the rules committee, what have you, about banning the tush push. And we know the Philadelphia Eagles kind of started that whole thing, and it's been really a massive part of their offense and their success. It was not banned, and the Eagles can continue to make that a part of their offensive effort. Maybe not a better offensive line in football, and maybe not a better quarterback to execute this play. How big is that for Philadelphia? And is that play alone worth a win or two in your mind?
It is a huge play, and I think it can be. It really is, because when you go into a game, especially for the Eagles, basically you're looking at 1st and 9 instead of 1st and 10. You think, oh, it's just a yard, what have you. We've seen plenty of times so many teams try to duplicate that or try to run straight regular run play, and they can't gain that yard. So the fact pretty much 9 times out of 10 you can get that yard, what have you, it changes your play calling immensely. You look at the 3rd down play calling. If it's 3rd and short and you're able to go around, you just go right up to the line. Teams don't have the time to really substitute anything in, run behind it, and you go there. So it really does affect the fact that you don't have to gain as many. You can get those automatic yards. You can change your play calling. You take more shots downfield, knowing especially if it's short. It definitely relies on a win or two, especially depending on the opponent. Because you get a team like, say, the Cowboys, their defensive tackles are not. No, Mozzie Smith is not one of the top tier defensive tackles in this league. You look at that overall, you can get that in the middle. It's cake.
I look at the NFC East, and I think it's been 23 consecutive years without a repeat division winner. I'm not sure if you're buying into that, but who, in your opinion, is the biggest threat to the Eagles in the NFC East?
Washington Commanders for sure. And I'm not just saying that just because they're the they were in the NFC Championship games last year. It's something about Dan Quinn when he faces the Eagles. He really knows that besides the NFC Championship game, he really knows how to play them tough. And you look at you look at Jaden Daniels, and as a rookie, the poise he showed, the arm strength he showed, the ability to move that offense. And to me, the biggest, with them being the biggest thing, they're the ones that can stop themselves. And I never understood why they did not give Terry McLaurin that extension earlier, because I think that lingers in. Because even though if he comes back and he's fine, some of the other players see that. It's a tough distraction. So you have to worry about, is that lingering a game or two into the season? And looking how close these teams are, that could be the difference between who hosts home field advantage in the NFC to who's the number 5 seed and having to go on the road. And we all know what happens with road playoff teams. It can get a lot to do. Look at the Minnesota Vikings, for instance. So yeah, I think they're the toughest team. Their defense, I know they had Vaughn Miller, the edges. They got a lot older for sure, but they have enough talent to really make things tough for the Eagles and potentially make that trend to go into 24.
Chris, what is your overall expectation for this team? And let's say, how many wins does that translate into the Eagles getting this year? And if you look at some of the stuff, there's a lot of reasons to kind of go against this team this year. They were 8-2 in one-score games last year. Their turnover margin was plus 11. We talked about them having such a difficult schedule this year. Per season win total projections, they have the 4th most difficult schedule in the NFL. They played a very soft schedule of opposing defenses last year. There are a lot of reasons you could say it could kind of go side. The workload for Saquon Barkley, we figure that can't be repeated. There's a lot of reasons you could say it could go sideways for this team this year. Again, what are your thoughts? Where do they land at the end of the year?
I think when we're all said and done, I think they get to 12 wins. And I think it's going to come down to a tiebreaker. I look at those last 3, you look at those last 3 games, Commanders, Bills, Commanders. That's right there is not only, that's for the division. I think that's also for season purposes as well, too. And I just look at that every time we try to count this Eagles team out and looking at them, there's been times I'm like, there's no way they can beat this team. No way they can do this. Next thing you know, Jalen Hurts finds a way to overcome that and they win. And it's something about just being like a winner, finding in those tight situations, in those late game situations, finding ways to win. That's what separates these teams that you see in championship games versus teams you see in the playoffs and go, oh, wow, we moved, what have you. So I think this team wins 12 games. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be in the dominant fashion we saw last year, anywhere near that. But I also think it could be something where we're looking at maybe they get to the championship game and not lose it, because that gauntlet, it wears over time. And you got a lot of players right there for it wears time. Who that's against? Could be the Rams and try to come back and get upset. Could be the Commanders again. Who knows that? But I think we're just looking at potential of seeing them come back and making a decent run.
I mean, obviously the Nick Sirianni fire has died down from the fan base after 4 weeks. They were fired last year. But what is the thought from the fans and everybody else on Nick Sirianni and kind of his acumen as a coach? I mean, obviously he's secure for the next couple of years at least, but we've seen Philly fans turn fast.
and that's the fun thing about that too, because if you we'll talk last year, it was just for conclusion. He's going. That's like what? And you saw what happened. He has the buy-in in the players. I still remember J.Brown at his locker in 2023. Still, everybody's calling for Nick's head, and in the middle of that slump, he stood up, saying Nick told him about how he called pass interference for the call and all that stuff to get it intentional. And you look at that, he still has to buy the players. The players believe in him. He finds ways to motivate them. And those are the most important things you need with a coach. So I think for now it's good, but let this team get a 3-game losing streak, misses things. Yeah, I think they'll be calling for his head. I mean, look at what happened with Doug Peterson. Same thing happened. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a 3-game losing streak and then they're calling for Nick's head in the middle of the season.
Not a lot of patience there out of sports fans in the Northeast. I hear you loud and clear. And Nick Sirianni, I'd say his track record is pretty darn good. Chris Franklin, thank you so much for joining us and helping us break down the Philadelphia Eagles tonight. Enjoy the season, my friend, and we'll talk again down the road.
Sounds great. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
All right, indeed. That is Chris Franklin. You can find him on Twitter at CFranklinNews. He on the pulse there for the Philadelphia Eagles. Mark, what do you think? You think 12 games seems about right? 12 wins for the Eagles?
Yeah, 12-5 feels about right. But again, it's hard to win 12 games. You have to have a certain amount of luck. You have to win close games, and that's not easy.
Yeah, I think I might go under 12. I don't know, 11 and a half is a pretty good number. Vegas is good about that type of thing, I've noticed. We'll come back and wrap up the program here pretty quick.